Well, sorry about that. I ran out of memory space or something, it looks like, and I had to delete a few videos. I was talking about the expansion of the universe and how everything is farther apart, and so we won't see as much in the universe. Fine. Okay. The universe may continue to expand forever, and we don't know that it's in the shape of a donut, really. But, it's not really what I'm trying to talk about right now. I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about my meltdown, and I'm also going to talk about why a person should believe that they are immortal in this universe, even if they don't believe in God. This idea is for all my friends who choose not to believe in the prime mover, don't want to worship any religion. I get it. I've been there, but I mean, it's like something that I think I should share because there's great hope in understanding that we have an immortal soul in this physical universe, even if you don't believe in God. And that's what I'm here to share. Before I begin, I'm going to start with a little Cremo. Woo! I love that smell so much. My God, it's good. Did you see this one yet? Check it. Really smells good. I don't get any money for that, but I just want to share another smell that I really enjoy putting on is this Skin Trip. This has been my main smell for my entire life, even ever since I was 5 years old. And this smells like a coconut tropical beach. It's like, it smells like a coconut cookie or something. It's so good. But you put that lotion on, and then you put the blue cedar and cypress cologne on top of it, and well, it works for me. I don't know. Anyway, I want to talk about how and why somebody should have hope that they're going to live forever and that they're immortal in this universe. When we die and you don't believe in God, you're still going to come back alive, whether you like it or not. So be prepared for that. And why do I feel this way? Well, check this out. Here's a book. Sometimes when a book is so good, I will buy it and keep it around. Otherwise, I used to keep my books around and have a bookshelf for them, but man, I move so much, and every time I move, they just keep getting lost to me. And it was, much easier to go to the library and get the access to all these great books through that source. And so what I did was I would just start writing down all the books that I read. I would keep a list, and then every book that I read, I would put it on this list right here. And, I began this when I started college in 2003. And it was all the books I could remember reading up to that point, and then every book ever read since that point. And so that's how I keep track of my books. But when a book is so good as this, I will buy it and keep it. Now, this book was written by a physicist who had a reputed reputation as a smart, physicist. He was superb at mathematics and everything. But when he wrote this book, he understood, he did a thought experiment and with his math and his physics, and he figured it out. And he discovered that what's going to happen in the future is that we will all be recreated. And we will have the same soul and personality, therefore, be the same person that you were when you died. And he explains this in this book using all the complex math, that he gets into. I mean, he really gets into it. Some of these math equations are just ridiculous, and I don't understand them all. But I can certainly get it figured out that what he's trying to say, And one of the things he's really getting at is that there's going to be a beginning and an end to the universe. So he believes that there's going to be an omega point and an alpha point. So the alpha point would be the beginning, the Big Bang, and the omega point would be the end of the universe. And to get to the end of the universe, he goes into the future using his physics and his math. And he asks the question at the beginning of the book, now that he says, now that we know what the universe has looked like in the last 14 billion years, using our science and background microwave radiation, the cosmic radiation is allowing us to see how the universe has been forming itself. And so he asks the question right away in the book, what will the universe look like in the future if you go 20 billion years? Or what if you go 100 billion years into the future? The universe is 13.8 billion years old. So if you go 100 billion years into the future, we're talking about, 6 or 7 times the age of the universe today. So we're not talking about a little bit of time. We're talking about a lot of time into the future and how the universe will look and what that will mean specifically for us, or for intelligence in the universe. And it's really exciting because basically he says that what's going to happen is, and I think we can all understand this more now than when he wrote this book in 93 or 94, he came out with this book. So he was probably, writing it and coming up with the math for this in the late 80s or the really early 90s. Well, since this book has come out, we've actually had movies talking about this idea. I mean, one of the best movies that I like that works on this idea of, the idea, I should probably tell you. The idea is that what will happen in the future, according to the physicist Tipler, who wrote the book, is that humans will be able to, create extremely complex technology that we don't even understand yet right now what that will be in the future. But we can begin to see it with quantum computers and with artificial intelligence. We can start to see in our real time that we will be able to create technology in the future that will continue to push intelligence. Now, obviously, we want our intelligence, we want human life to be what's being pushed into the future, not just the memory of humans and computers making that memory copied. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but the way Tipler breaks it down is basically this. He says, in the future, humans will realize that the planet won't last forever. And so what we will do, just like Star Trek, we will learn how to move off the planet, and we will, using our technology, begin to, our desire will be to go to other planets to live. We may or may not reach other planets. He doesn't really talk about that as being a good or bad thing. What he's really focusing on is the technology that we create to move our civilization off planet and move to another planet. The technology is crucial because as that technology becomes developed, it will allow computers to create computers. And those computers will create computers. And every computer that is created by another computer will be able to create a simulation of the truth or whatever we were wanting originally, So, I guess, for example, if, if we want, let's say we want to make food, because we're trying to survive, we will make a computer that will then make a bunch of computers that will then have a program inside of each of those that can then make the food for us. So, it's kind of what we do now in a factory. We'll have a main source, the main first computer, which will then create a bunch of other computers, which would be like manager computers. Those manager computers would be maybe distributed to all the spaceships and stuff where the people are. And then those manager computers will also be creating program within themselves, a third program, and this program is literally making the food. But there's no end to the computers making computers idea in this book as we go into the future. What Tipler's saying is that eventually, as the billions of years go by, that humans and biological life will necessarily end. And that's when a lot of people think that maybe this will be the end of life and the end of intelligence. But not according to the mathematics. According to the mathematics, if we set up the technology correctly in the beginning, even if humans are unable to sustain their biological form for whatever reason, lack of finding a planet, or they run out of food, or war, or something, tragic accident, or something like that. I mean, assuming that the technology doesn't get destroyed, because, that would ruin this idea for the most part. And then evolution would have to start all over, creating life on a planet that evolves into intelligence that can then start this whole process again of creating this intelligence that will then do what I'm about to say. Tipler is suggesting that the technology in the future of billions of years will be able to recreate every atom, every particle in that makes up who you are. And as he points out, I've got some notes. It says he says that a human being can be described, a human being body, it can be described exhaustively by 10 to the 45th power of complexity, which means 10, the number 10 with 45 zeros after it. So basically 1 with 46 zeros, that big number is how complex the human body is. And he says that it's absolutely knowable, and we can describe it in its knowability, exhaustively. We can fully and completely describe the human body. No trouble recreating the human body. So in the future, these computers that we create, this technology that we have, he's suggesting they will continue to create themselves. They will manufacture more computers, kind of like in the Matrix, where the computers just keep making themselves and create their own world. Except that in this sense, the point of it all is to push intelligence. So the computers aren't going to be bad and nefarious. They won't try to kill anything that has intelligence. They will try to give it life, which we've also programmed into the computers to do this, to give it life and move forward. And so in the future, we're talking 100 billion years or more, the technology will be, and the intelligence in the technology will be so superior to anything that we can even imagine today, that they will actually be able to recreate every one of us. And you ask yourself maybe, well, how could the computers recreate every one of us if we've died? How would they even know about us? Well, there's certainly two answers to that. The first answer is, please make a digital copy of yourselves. Please put yourself on YouTube. That would make it a lot easier. Anybody who has a digital representation of themselves is going to probably be the first ones to be reproduced, because it'll be easier. But the idea is that we could recreate the entire person of George Washington or Caesar or anybody. And why? Because of the second law of thermodynamics. I mean, it's, if you believe in science, I guess, you could believe that the energy in a system stays in that system. Well, this system is the universe. And so the energy called you is in the system right now. You're alive and you're real. And so when a person dies, that energy is still, their energy is still in the system. obviously their body is still in the system. We can literally watch their body, degrade and melt back into the natural system of ashes, ash to ash, dust to dust, a body going back to the earth. Or if we burn a body, same thing, it goes back into the atmosphere. And so we could pretty easily understand how a body could be, still in the system as an energy, as part of the energy system, or the part of the energy of a system. And one would say, well, how could you recreate that body, even though you know that their body was in the system? Well, in the future, they're going to be able to figure that out. Even if you don't have the DNA, the computers are going to be able to understand exactly how to. And he has all the mathematical formulas to explain everything I'm talking about. Right? I decided not to quote or give too much jargon, but yeah, he's saying that not a problem. The computers in the future will be able to actually understand how to recreate the physical part of every person. And then the next part would be the personality or the soul, the animus, the spirit that we have that gives us animation, makes us who we are, our personality. Where does that go when we die? Isn't that the question, though? That's the $1 million question. And so I've already talked about what I think happens to that. I bring in God and I bring in religion and the idea that, there's more, much, much more after we die that we start experiencing and encountering. But if you don't want to believe in that, then think of it this way. According to physicist Dr. Tipler, he says it's going to be a lot like the movie Transcendence. I think they made that movie in 2012 or 13 with Johnny Depp. And in that movie, Johnny Depp is a human being who downloads his consciousness into the internet, into a computer. And it's on that same thought train that Dr. Tipler is referring to, how we would receive our spirit and put it back into our newly made physical body. There's a complex mathematical formula for how the computers in the future are going to capture our personality, our essence, and it's too complex to try to describe it. I don't think I have enough intelligence to do a layman's description. But there's another doctor who says something so similar that I can use his book and his words as an analogy of how we would put our spirit, our animation, our soul back into our physical body that we've just remade. The computers just remade your body. Or even if they didn't, even if they just made a computer animated, like a cyborg body, even if we just had an R2D2 computer body, we could still grab your soul and put it into that robot. And how? Again, the second law of thermodynamics. If you do have animation and a personality when you're alive, if you do have something, I'm just going to call that thing, that animating spirit, a soul from this point on. Whatever animates you, that soul is also energy in the universe. It's also part of the energy system. If you don't believe in God, it would necessarily have to be a part of the system. And so that is also still contained inside the entire universe, even after you die. Because of the laws of thermodynamics. The system conserves the energy. It stays in the system. So that means, Dr. Lipton wrote a book. This is a biologist, and he wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. And I think that using the word belief was an unfortunate word for the title of his science book, but it was a great book because he talks about how even though DNA is used as a copy machine to make more of the same parts of yourself, or to make another you, what's even more important, this is really fascinating to me, even more important than your DNA are the proteins in your cells. On the edge of every cell, there's a fatty layer called the phospholipid layer. It surrounds it's in the cell wall, that surrounds every cell. And in that cell wall, proteins are sticking out and have weird shapes. You got a cell, and then in that cell, there's a protein. It's half in the cell, it's half out of the cell. Those proteins move themselves into weird shapes, and every shape that a protein has ends up making you. Have you ever asked yourself, how is it that your face looks basically the same for your entire life? Well, we can thank that to the HLA proteins, the human LA proteins that are constantly making the shape of your face so that we can always see who you are. We can recognize you. So the proteins make up who we are, and what's interesting about it, though, is that every protein in our body is getting its marching orders from outside of our body. It's true. I have it right here. I should try to probably find it, but he's basically saying that every cell is receiving an electromagnetic information from the outside world. Here it is. Every functional protein in our body is made as a complementary image of an environmental signal. Every protein in our bodies is a physical electromagnetic complement to something in the environment. Well, that's pretty cool, because that means that, it means a lot, but it definitely means that, our proteins in our cells, starting from the very first cell when you were a zygote, are receiving electromagnetic information from the universe. And as it receives that electromagnetic information, it creates you. And as Dr. Lipton points out, these proteins are acting like receivers. They are like TV antennas receiving the electromagnetic signal, which I'm going to call your soul. And that's why it's so wonderful, because these to understand and to think about, these proteins that are in every one of our cells are constantly receiving the signal that is called your spirit, your soul, what animates you. And we're receiving that soul signal from outside our body. We're receiving it, and our body receives it, and it gives us our spirit, and allows us to have a personality. Believe it or not, but that's how the physics of biology is talking about the epigenetic reality, the outside of our gene reality. Genes are super important, but he said that DNA is not the most important part of who you are. The DNA is actually just a copy machine, which is really good and important, but not as important as the proteins that receive this signal from outside of our body. That is our soul signal. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Meaning of Life with, Monty Python, but if you watch that movie, remember the wafer thin, the wafer at the end, the big guy, well, just the one wafer. No, I can't. Oh, please eat a wafer. That's my favorite part. But there's so many funny parts in that movie. But right in the very middle of that movie, suddenly there's like the truth. remember that in the middle of that movie, suddenly the waiter, I think the waiter who was trying to give the man the wafer thin wafer, well, after that man explodes, the waiter, I forget his name, I should know all their names, but Terry, I think his name was, but he's dressed as a waiter, and he's, the camera's on him, and the camera basically is our point of view. So he's talking to us. He's looking right in the camera, and he's like, breaks the, what do they call it? Breaks the scene where he breaks out of the character of him being a waiter, and he says, hey, come here, and he says, come follow me. I want to take you somewhere. And he takes us back to his mama's house. It's really cool. He basically takes us home. Right? Like where do we go when we die? Maybe home. But anyway, so he takes us, what I'm trying to say is there's this scene in this movie, The Meaning of Life, where they actually say that our spirit is a signal in the universe that we are receiving as human beings. So they knew this in this movie somehow before Dr. Lipton discovered it scientifically as a proof, and so I said all that just to basically get us to believe and understand that if there's a universe that's an energy system, well, then anything in that system is still in that system, and part of who you are is your spirit, your soul. And so and if you don't believe in God, then your soul's still in this universe. It doesn't go to heaven or go somewhere else. It stays in the universe as a part of the energy. So, the Biology of Belief book and Dr. Lipton has explained how and why we might receive that soul signal, because we grew, as we evolved over eons, we grew better antennas. We evolved and made better proteins, allowing us to receive a better signal from the soul, which is why evolution is so critical to believe in and understand, that we need to, we could maybe grow our bodies into even better receivers for the spirit, and even have better animation and more creativity and thoughts. But that's another topic as well. What I'm really just trying to say here is that if you die, your energy, soul and body is still in the system, even if you don't believe in God. And so in the future, Dr. Tipler is simply stating that he figured it out. He did all the math, he figured it all out. He ruined his reputation because he was talking about God type stuff in science, in the science world. He didn't ruin it to the point of, he's not like a total clown or something, but you know how it works. Reputation in these fields, they don't change their opinion rather quickly. But he said he couldn't not write this book because it was simply true and valid. So truth says, what's valid says, in the future, the technology and the computers, the artificial intelligence will be like transcendence, but better. The computers will literally be able to reproduce not only your physical body, which now again, those, if I reproduced your body, your body has those proteins in it, exactly, those antennas to receive the spirit signal, the soul signal. So one could say, I just have to build your body again, and then you should be able to receive your soul. Tipler's not saying it that way. He's saying that the technology will be so good that the computers will be able to actually grab your soul. It will know how to pull it out of the universe, that energy, and put it back into your body. Which means that the idea of resurrection of the body that so many Christians believe, and it is valid. We can already prove it mathematically. So I just wanted to throw it out there, for what it's worth, that even if you don't believe in God, the idea of immortality is almost a certainty. even if we blew up the planet and we lost all life and computers and had to start over, it's just a matter of time. And, before another planet would evolve intelligence, and then that intelligence would come to the level of being able to do the same thing he's talking about. And so, that's why I said, if you're alive right now, you're going to be alive forever. It's just a matter of going to sleep and waking up again. If you die, you go to sleep. And then when you wake up, it might be 100 billion years later, but to you, it's just seconds. You just fell asleep and woke up again. So it's pretty exciting. There was another more recent movie with Ryan Reynolds, Free Guy. Free Guy is actually something that Tipler talks about early in the book. Not Free Guy, the movie specifically, but the idea of the movie. The idea that, well, he says, we don't know if we're in some kind of matrix or, a simulated, that's it, Sim City, simulated world. And he really doesn't believe that we are, but he's saying, how would we know? And what difference would it make? Everybody in the simulated city would think it's real and wouldn't, know anything different. So go watch Free Guy if you haven't, because it goes down that path perfectly with a lot of fun. It's really good in that way. And that's why I love so many great movies that are out now today, like The Matrix, Free Guy, Transcendence. There's so many more. Even Inception, which was really weird, But for sure, Free Guy and Transcendence are working on this idea of Tipler's book, which is, hey, even if you don't believe in God, moving into the future, we will have the technology and the know-how to literally replicate your body, which will then have all the proteins that could receive the spirit on one level. Or as Tipler says, we could recreate your body, grab your soul, spirit, from the universe, that energy that's out there, identify it, grab it, merge it back into who you are. And you will have the same memories. It's not like you're being, starting over. You will still have everything where you left off. So it's pretty cool. I think that it's amazing, actually. It's really hopeful, and it actually helped me get back into God. Just a side note, one of the ideas that a physicist named Wheeler DeWitt, he says that he asks the question, remember what I said about waveforms, and that when a conscious observer observes a situation, the waveform collapses and it's now a point in time. Wheeler DeWitt says, how did the universe get started? How could the universe become a point in time so that it was a Big Bang at all? It would have been a waveform before that. So somebody had to come by and observe the universe at its inception, at the beginning, to make it real, a point in time, so that it would be real at all. And so, of course, they say that's God. That the idea, Wheeler didn't say it, but I mean, so many people after him who heard him say that said, well, who else could observe the universe except the creator of the universe? And, somebody could say, well, maybe we're just a simulation of in some alien's laboratory. That's fine. That doesn't change my belief in God, because the real quote that I should probably share with you, that I almost said last time, but I didn't, because it's a quote from a Catholic, saint, and I didn't want to bring too much of the religion into it too harshly, but Saint Anselm, he said, God is that which nothing greater can be thought. So that's a perfect quote. That which nothing greater can be thought. So maybe our aliens are also in a simulation, and we're in their simulation. And maybe those aliens are in a simulation. You know, you could just keep going as long as you want, but eventually you come to that which nothing greater can be thought. It has to stop somewhere. And so, anyway, that's what I was talking about as far as immortality of the soul, even if you don't believe in God, and we can be on the same thought page together. You don't have to worship anything for this to be real. It sounds like the critical thing is to be a good person. You know, there's so many reasons why a person would want that, even if you don't believe in God. For example, you know, let's just take the classic bad guy example, like Hitler. You know, what a jerk. The biggest classic jerk in the world. Or you know, Pol Pot. Or Lenin over in Russia. Lenin was the worst of them all. He killed, you know, I think it was almost 30 million of his very own citizens, of his own people, in the pogroms. He'd be just, you know, he would kill the landowners and then give all the peasants the land of the landowners, and then come back 5 years later, and any peasant who took that land was now a landowner, and they got killed. And he was doing that for decades, from like the death of I'm sorry, I said Lenin. From the death of Lenin, it was Stalin who was doing that. Lenin may not have gone that far, but he got killed off a little bit in the 20s. Anyway, it was a shit show. I mean, it was not a good thing. My point is, are these people going to be the first people that the computers, the technology are going to want to recreate? I mean, I think there's going to be some consideration when it comes to things like that. And it seems to me like the first people that a computer would want to create would be like Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, you know, Mother Teresa, people like this. But if you don't think that technology moving into the future, billions of years, is going to be able to, you know, take energy within a system and recreate it, then you, well, you'd be wrong. The math says that you would be wrong. And so the only real loose thing here is the idea of soul. You know, we don't have the proof that soul is that energy in the system that would be grabbed. But then, you know, well then, if you don't believe in God and you have a body that is animated with your personality, then I have to ask you, what is your personality? What does that mean? Who are you if you aren't your personality? It looks like I got into the sun a little bit too much. Some sun. I got the chilblains. The chilblains. Well, I wanted to share my idea of what that is. This brings back God again, of course, but I think it's, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily. It depends on where you think all energy comes from. I think all energy comes from the source, which is God. But do you guys remember what a hologram is? You remember a hologram? You know, it's that thing where it looks like there's some three-dimensional image in front of you, and then you go to touch it, but then it's not there. It's your hand moves right through it. But you can walk all the way around this image and see every piece of this image in a three-dimensional light image. Holograms are really amazing. You know how a hologram works. You take light, you split it in half using a mirror, you know, so the light is split. It starts out being one laser beam, and then you use a mirror to split it. And one half of the laser beam goes to the object and shines on the front of the object. You know, it'll shine, the light will shine on the object. Oop, got a little ouch on my hand. And then the other half of the laser beam just passes the object, doesn't touch the object. And after, you know, after the one half of the object touches the object and the other half doesn't, they meet up. They meet up again, and that's where the magic happens. When the two halves of the laser are integrated again, it is capable of showing us a full, around the bottle, three-dimensional image of the bottle, even though the light only showed, all the photons hit only the front of the bottle. When it was split, that half of the light, it just hit the front of the bottle. The other half didn't even touch the bottle, it just passes the bottle. But as I explained before, we know through wave function that the light is actually all everywhere at once, which is fantastic. So the light is shining on the back as well as the front, and the light is hitting the bottom and the top and the sides, even though we're only shining the light to the front. And that's why a hologram will work. And that's also why if you take any one piece, all you need is one photon out of the billions of photons that you have in that laser beam. If you just took one photon after you reintegrated the laser beams again, after the laser had hit the object and then come back together, just one photon is all it takes to have the entirety of the information for the entire thing. Just like a fractal, how you can just take the smallest piece of a fractal, and we'll give you all the information about the rest. Holograms are awesome. And I think it's an analogy of how our spirit interacts with our brain, our mind. Well, so I wrote this quote, and it says, a hologram. Yeah, sometimes I write quotes in here myself. Just, when I'm reading, I'll write a lot of stuff from what I'm reading, but then sometimes I come up with an idea that I think is good enough to put in this book. And that's what I did here. So I wrote, a hologram is an analogy of our spirit-mind connection. If spirit equals the laser condensate, which then is split in two, and mind equals the half of the laser that receives information from the objective world, then, as like a hologram, the two beams are conjoined, giving us experiential spirit-mind. And of course, the brain itself is the substrate, the holographic mechanism by which the spirit-mind may function. And so, in this idea, I am suggesting that our soul is the laser beam. Our spirit and our mind, our consciousness. I'm going to say mind basically equals brain. The proteins, the physical matter called brain is mind. But the part that animates all of it is the spirit. And the spirit is coming from the source and is flowing through the universe as an energy field, looking for an antenna to receive it. And that brain that we have is the antenna that receives that spirit. And so, if you think of our connection to the source as a hologram, it would perfectly make sense that we could have a three-dimensional reality here that looks real. Everything looks like it's completely as real as a hologram, and a hologram is real, right? It's not real, but it's clearly not the reality. Like I said before in another video, you can touch a hologram and go, oh yeah, that's not really a bottle of cologne. That was just an image of a bottle of cologne. And so, but the image of the bottle of cologne is also something. It's not real. So I guess that's a little kind of a complicated way if you're not already thinking about holograms or whatever. But I had to throw it out there that, even if you don't believe in God, the energy of our spirit has to be in the system, even if we die. And in the future, we're going to be able to take that energy called your personality, and we're going to be able to put it back into your body. Or if you want, another body. but it seems like it would make the most sense to put it back in your own body, because that's, going to be the most comfortable. Well, I should probably talk about the breakdown that I had. So I had a breakdown on the weekend. I mentioned before I don't like to go in town. I don't want to risk it. With autism, it's very clear to me, over the years that and with the hearing loss, I have communication issues and breakdowns, and then, or I will be willing to act, myself unmasked, and sometimes people will react to that in a negative way, causing trouble for me sometimes. I was talking to my son yesterday, and he gave me the greatest metaphor for how he deals with that problem. He also has autism. He's 30 years old. And, oh man, I have to tell you, if you are lucky enough to be a parent of an autistic child right now, I have to share with you that everything you're going through, any hardships, any troubles that you're having right now, it's going to be worth it. I had, the best conversation with my son yesterday that I've had all year. And this is because we're like minds. He understands exactly where I'm coming from, my energy, my tone. But even more than that, the way his brain works and the way he thinks and what he's talking about. And I'm talking with him kind of similarly like I'm talking with you. And he's just right there with me. It makes me think that he's read all the books that I've read, because he has this wisdom. He really does. He's an old soul. My aunt called it when he was 6 months old. He was being held by her, and he was declared an old soul by her then, and it's been true ever since. I mean, all his life. So if you're a parent with a kid with autism, you're lucky, because they grow up and they're going to be a better version of us. And so we get to look up to them a little bit, and they're going to be, they're your best friend. They're, a support person, even a little bit, ironically, goes both ways, and everything. There's a lot of good there. Trust me, I know. And, I had this breakdown, and I explained it to him, and he made me feel really good about it. Like, it's normal, it's okay, it's not bad. But what happened was I went into public much more than average. My average is maybe once every 45 days or once every 3 weeks, but since Lent, since even before February 14th, I had been going routinely to church, getting into this season of Easter. I was going to take full advantage of it this year. And so I did. I went to church, I volunteered my time, did everything I could think of doing. And it was great, it was fantastic. But part of that was last week, Easter week, you got to go, you don't got to go. I get to go. That's really the way I should say it. I got to go. I get to go. I went Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then Sunday. That was the Easter week. It really started the Sunday before. So every time I went, Thursday night, it was at night. Every time I went, it was at night. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday were all at night. And then Easter was a normal morning service. So for me, going to church at night is fine. I love it. But it means that, I have to conserve my energy. It means I'm going to be out and about and in the world at the end of my day, where I'm going to be the most tired. And so Thursday wasn't a problem. It started at 6:30 and it wasn't a problem. Friday, I went again. Mass started at 6:30 at night, and it wasn't a problem. Then on Saturday night, Mass started at 8:30 and didn't end until around 11. And even though I tried to conserve my energy on Saturday, even tried to take a little nap and everything, excuse me, I didn't have enough energy for the entire day. So I think I'm going to try to blame it on energy level a little bit, because it's certainly true. If you are tired and you don't have enough energy, it's easier for me to melt down. Well, one of the things we do for Lent means, it's the idea of giving up something that you would normally do. Like you're trying to break a habit or something, you would use the 40 days before Christmas, before Easter. Between the beginning of Lent and Easter is 40 days. And you would use those 40 days you would pick something to not do. And typically what we do, is we miss a meal. We fast. And so I started fasting in January, even before Lent started, which is why I was embarrassed about my skinny arms, when I made the black shirt series. But, I was Lenting. I was fasting. And that's fine. And I got skinny arms. So what are you going to do? Plus, you couldn't see my big muscles because they were hidden. But anyway, I'm just kidding. I'll show you my muscles one day. In this summer, I'll put on my muscle shirt. But that's not really important. That was a comedic break. But yeah, so it was Saturday night. I was tired. Went to Mass. Mass was great. Mass was so great. And then after Mass, I went to get some gas before I drove home. And what I do when I go anywhere, I take my dog, Dexter, with me, because that's his one chance, to get out, go to the park. And I don't want to keep him at home because I don't go out much. I want him to enjoy the world as much as possible because I know how much he likes that. So he's with me. And he's super excited, because I just got back in the car and we're now going to the gas station. And when I parked at the gas station, he barked in my ear. And he always barks whenever I park. I can't get him to stop. I will not use a shock collar. But I've used everything I could think of besides a shock collar, like shaking coins in a bottle at him to get him to stop, or I can't get him to stop. He was a rescue, and I didn't raise him as a puppy, so he's his own man, and he's not going to stop barking when he's excited. So what I do is I put my earplugs in when I get in the car to drive anywhere, which it gives him the saves my ears from damage. When he barks so loud, it's like an extra loud bark, and it's what it's like when you. I hope you don't, and I don't either. But I can only imagine if you shoot a gun inside of a car. They say don't do that. I've seen it in some movies now, like trying to show the validity of it. Anytime you see somebody shooting a gun inside of a car and people are not going like, oh God, with their, that was too loud, then that's not a verisimilitude. That's not real as to real life. But anyway, it was like shooting a gun inside of a car. His bark was so loud with my low energy. And I may have been thinking about my, weird things in my head too a little bit, but I melted down. I was at the gas station and I'm so embarrassed. Fortunately I didn't start cussing, but I kept telling him to be quiet, and I was yelling at my poor innocent dog to be quiet. And like exclaiming to the world, why can't you be quiet? And all this stuff. And it was just ridiculous. There's nothing I did or said when I was melting down could have changed anything. And I was in public, and I think I saw somebody from church over there getting some gas too. And it was just like, oh my God, I am so embarrassed. And I couldn't stop myself either. It was like I got triggered. And I thought, well, that's a genuine meltdown. It lasted all of maybe 15, 20 seconds or 30 seconds, which was way too long for me, before I was like, what am I yelling at? My poor dog, He can't really help himself. And it was my fault anyway. I forgot to put my earplugs in when I got back in the car. But it just reminded me that I can get that way pretty quick. I was starving. It feels so good now that Lent's over. Oh God, I love eating. I really do. Well, so I was dealing with so many anxieties with hunger, with sleep, with social anxiety, the stress of getting the gas in that moment as well. And then to have him bark in my ear, I don't want to play it off lightly. He created damage. It was the hearing loss that I have in my ear means that the hairs, the cilia are bent down, which means that loud noises can cause even more damage. So it's a real bad progression. You can't, I'm not supposed to let myself have loud noises hit my ear because it will cause even more damage. And when it does cause more damage, it literally hurts. If you know what that feels like when somebody yells in your ear at the bar because the music's too loud and you can't hear them, but you can certainly feel that they just yelled in your ear because it hurts. Well, it was like that times 10. And so I realized that I was just getting more deaf, and I got frustrated. And I feel bad about it. But what can you do, Well, I know what I can do. I put my earplugs in. That'll certainly help. And I don't go into town as little as possible is my mantra. I stay away from people unless I'm working at a job, then I put my mask on. My kid, Caleb, he's got the best job. He works 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And when he got the job, they hired him knowing he had autism. And, he is just so set. It's so great. I'm really happy for him. He's got a really nice apartment downtown Eugene, Oregon, on the 3rd or 4th floor, which is rare in Eugene to be on the 4th floor of anything, much less an apartment. And he's just real close to, the library downtown, which is, as I've mentioned before, it's an extremely important place for me and him and our family, always has been. And he doesn't drive. So he uses the buses and to get to work and everything, and that encourages his boss to hold true to his schedule and not call him because they know he can't just drive on a whim to cover a shift or something. So I'm jealous. He's got the life that if I wanted to go get a job part-time, that I would choose for myself. So I asked him, yesterday I asked him, how do you deal? I had this meltdown. I explained it to him. How do you deal with it? The stress. And he's like, he said, this is a great metaphor. He said, that movie Beauty and the Beast? And I had to be honest, I didn't exactly remember that movie. My movies when I was a kid for Disney were Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty. Those were awesome. But I did watch it at some point, with him. And he said, well, remember the beast, had magic put on him to be a beast. And there was a rose, with a stem underneath a bell jar on a table in the movie. And he said that in the movie, this rose was, being protected with the bell jar, but the rose would lose petals. And eventually, if it lost all of its petals, then the magic would be permanent and the guy would stay a beast forever. But he said the metaphor was, I am that rose. My life, when I go out and leave the apartment, I put the headphones on. I basically put myself in a bell jar. I ignore everything. He's lucky he doesn't have to drive. I really wish I didn't have to drive. Driverless cars, that seems like a good idea. But so yeah, it's like I'm just like that rose in the bell jar. You know, I don't let anything get to me because it can't get through the glass. And I thought, well, that's pretty sweet. That's a good way to do it, you know. And that means he may be missing some things. I remember one time we were, you know, I like to sit in hot tubs. So sometimes I'll find out where the hot tubs are. You know, there's this great place in Portland, in that neighborhood Woodstock that I talked about before, where there's a community center, you know, and they've got a swimming pool with slides and a hot tub and windows all around. And, you know, it's located literally in a park. So when you sit in the hot tub, even though there's windows, you can still see there's the trees and the squirrels running around and everything. It's really beautiful. And it only costs $4 or $5 to sit there and use the hot tub all day, or go swim, or go lift weights, or play basketball, and all the other stuff they got going on. You know, so I took him there once, and he did not know that there was a girl flirting with him. I mean, there's maybe 15 people in the hot tub, big tub, and she was fully flirting with him, and he didn't notice. And that's one of the things he maybe misses out. You know, I try to always get him to come with me to concerts and stuff, and he doesn't like to do it, but when he does, I know he's giving me a gift, you know, of love. And he mentioned one of the concerts in our talk yesterday, so I know it must be, you know, making some kind of a good memory for him. And I just can't say enough how awesome it is to have an adult son with autism to talk to. And if you are a parent with autism of an autistic child, you're lucky, because you're going to have that in the future. And it's priceless. You know, that'll be the one person, maybe, but you know, it'll be for sure, he will be a person you can always connect with. And the more you share love now, the better that connection's going to be later, obviously. So anyway, that's enough minutes, and this is the longest video I've put out yet. And I love everybody. Did you know that? I love you, and I love you, and I love you. I really do. That's how it goes with me. You have to give me a pretty good reason to not. And even then, I'm still going to love you. But I hope everybody loves somebody. And I hope everybody takes care of themselves. And if you got it in you, take care of somebody else. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.